Welcome to the Awaken Heart Podcast. I'm your host, Nancy Walters. Get ready to create magic and miracles as you lean into your heart's desires. I believe not only does the heart want what it wants, but it knows. This show is a weekly deep dive into what it means to live from an awakened heart. I'll be sharing inspiring stories and real conversations with people just like you, who have turned the ordinary into the extraordinary. My mission is to show you how you too can be connected and heart-centered in every area of your life. Your journey to aligning with more love, more joy, and your wildest dreams come true starts now. Hello and welcome back to the Awaken Heart Podcast. I'm your host, Nancy Walters, and today, we've got a show for you. All you truth seekers, all you awakened ones, all those that are beginning to question the reality that is around them, and really coming here to create change and create leaders and to lead from a place of real integrity and intuitive knowing. I know I've talked about how sometimes the conversations I have and take on a life of their own. You know, I might start with an intention and then it kind of just lets the conversation just goes where it needs to go, like whatever is intuitively given or wherever the spirit takes us. So today, originally, and we do talk about it in this podcast, it was going to be about the Akashic Records. And we do talk about the Akashic Records and how they can help you in your life. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Akashic Records, they are something that we all have access to. The Akashic Records contain the wisdom, guidance, and spiritual support we need in this lifetime and all lifetimes. The Akashic Records exist as an energetic archive of all souls throughout time, and this includes all past, present, and future possibilities. Some experts envision the Akashic Records as an endless filing cabinet of information. Others view it as an online database, and according to the records themselves, they exist in another higher dimension referred to as the Akasha. Today's guest, Jennifer Longmore, has done just that. For over 17 years, she has been helping people remember who they really are through over 30,000 life purpose sessions, including the who's who of actors, professional athletes, CEOs of leading companies, and other influential luminaries. As a former forensic investigator, Jennifer honored her calling to become a channel and healer and has since taught over 100,000 people in over 100 countries to use their Akashic Records to release deep-seated trauma and to heal their lives once and for all. Jennifer is a much sought-after media personality, a 10-time best-selling author, and the creator of the #1 Akashic Record Training School in the world. So in this podcast, you are going to hear about the Akashic Records and what they are and how they can help you. But we also take a very deep dive into so much of what is going on in our world today and has been going on for a long time. Because everything that we see on the 3D level, racism, loss of freedoms, mass vaccinations, there's geoengineering, there's religious and political corruption. Like, we are seeing this. It's right in the front of our face. It's been there for the last couple of years. It's been there a long, long time, but a lot of us are seeing it now because it was so in our face in these last 2 years. It's important to understand that there's a lot more going on here than meets the eye. That leads to who is actually in charge that are using their power over humans, say your favorite athlete, or people that are in entertainment is another one. Government, definitely. Political figures, anyone of influence. They're using them basically as puppets to carry out whatever they have planned, and the classic divide and conquer on unseen levels. This cult, if you will, has been around for thousands of years, and they're very hostile forces that are keeping us in a perpetual state of disembodied fear and for physical survival and limiting our 5 senses and perception. And what it really is doing is disconnecting us from our deeper wisdom of our bodies and the divinity within. So, Jennifer, we dive really deep into who is behind the perceptions, that we are experiencing in our world today, and how to dissimulate what is truth and what is trying to deceive and mislead us. Now, we all know, because we've been on it, that the path to awakening isn't a straight line, and it can be very not pretty at times. Not all the little fairy dust and little angels singing in the background, but with the proper knowledge and the right guidance, it can be a lot less bumpy. So let me tell you, I had my mind blown by this conversation. It really opened me up to a whole new way of looking at things. So, truth seekers, get ready to really dive deep and prepare to have your sense of knowing and awareness expanded on levels that you could not have even imagined. And since this is about awakening, some of you already know. And without any further delay, here is today's guest, Jennifer Longmore. Hi, Jennifer. Welcome to the Awaken Heart podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm just so thrilled for you to be here and what we're going to be talking about. And I think it's so important in this day and age for us to be really connected to ourselves on a soul level, because like we've seen, there's so much happening in the world right now, and there's so much happening at such an accelerated pace. And there's something called the Akashic Records that Jennifer is very attuned to, doing over 30,000 soul sessions for clients all over the world.
I calculated my hours at being at least 30,000, right? And that's with teaching classes and various things like that. So it's a lot of time.
Yeah. So this is just one of the things that she's helping people do to really empower themselves and to really learn about what the soul purpose is, and helping others guide them into, really a sense of empowerment and, living a life of light and love and leadership. So Jennifer, this is something that you've been in tune with for a long time. You're very intuitive. You had, since you were a young child, you've been exposed to knowing things that, other people didn't quite know. And as a child, you realize that you're knowing things that people don't know, and it can kind of scare you and take you away from opening it up to those gifts that you have. So can you let our audience know how this began for you and how you ended up accepting and cultivating it to really helping and working with other people?
Yeah, I'd love to. So when I was really young, I remember seeing a lot of orbs when I was in my crib. I was very telekinetic, so I had a lot of things moving in my room. That I was obviously moving with my mind, but of course not really knowing how to harness that gift. I went for my first past life regression, as you kind of alluded to, with my parents when I was 4, which was a trip. And of course, when you're a kid, as you know, we don't know that the rest of the world doesn't live the way we are. We just think, oh, everyone does this. This is what everyone does. So when I went out in the world and went, oh, apparently I'm upsetting people by knowing things that I don't know that they don't know, right? I'm just speaking candidly as though people should know what I'm talking about with respect to what's happening in their life. And then it kind of felt like a curse. I didn't really know what to do with it. I was pretty angry, actually, because I have these, at the time, they didn't feel like gifts, but I've since learned they are. And so I thought, well, no amount of resisting this is making it go away. What would happen if I just leaned into it to see what's on the other side of this, right? If there was a silver lining in this, what would it be? And so things started opening up a little bit better for me. And then I think I was always working in the records, but I was working in a JOB. I joke about that because we all have them at some point, right? And stands for just over broke. And I was already wanting to start my own business, but I started having this dream of this very sacred text with gold leafing and Sanskrit writing in it. And it was flipping. The pages were flipping for 2 weeks through my whole sleep state for 2 weeks. Every night I went to bed. So I went into work on that final day, and my colleague said to me, you look, no offense, but you look really tired. Are you okay? And I said, well, actually, I haven't been sleeping. And I shared about this dream. And she said, well, why don't you just ask your guides what the dream is about? And I thought it was the funniest thing I'd ever heard, because I know better. Like I knew to ask about dreams, right? And to dissect it. But for whatever reason, I wasn't, with it. So that night I said, okay, guys, you clearly have something to tell me. Just make sure I remember it, I understand it in the morning. And in the middle of the night, I heard, these are the Akashic records. You must learn them so that you can teach them. And I woke up at 8:30 in the morning. I remember it actually, my clock's at 8:33, which is a pretty interesting time to wake up in the morning, because on top of that, it was also way later than I would typically wake up. The phone rang at 9:05, and it was a guy asking to book a reading. And I was so stunned. I thought I was still sleeping, actually, because it was so surreal. And I said, oh, I don't do readings. And he's like, well, your friend Karen said you do readings. I'm like, well, Karen doesn't know that I do. Like, I wasn't saying that out loud, but I called my friend after, who owns a crystal store. And she's like, yeah, this guy called me to book, or asked if anyone there did Akashic readings. And your name blurted out of my mouth. I don't know why it blurted out of my mouth. And I gave him your number. So that was on the Saturday. On Monday, I did a reading with him. And then it just kind of snowballed. The Akashic records have this interesting way of opening doors and like bringing people to you, right? Because it kind of calls you home. It's a homecoming because it's in alignment with your soul. And so that was 18 years ago that I started this full time. I was already sort of in business on the QT for other reasons. And so, yeah, now, and I was just doing readings, and then people said, can you teach me how to do this? And I said, well, I wish I could, but nobody's ordained me. Like, nobody has like given me the Akashic record priesthood, so to speak. Right. So people started getting angry with me. They thought I was hoarding the information. I was like, no, I'm actually just trying to protect you. Nobody has determined that I'm worthy of being able to teach this thing. And then people just kept asking. And then I remember the dream. I was like, okay, well, I guess they wouldn't have given me the dream, and I wouldn't keep being asked to teach if I wasn't meant to teach this. So I asked the guides to help me create the course, and I taught level 1, which is how to open your own records. And then people said, when's level 2? And I'm like, I don't have a level 2 for you. What are you talking about? And so I created a level 2. And then at the end of level 3 or level 2, they said, when's level 3? And I'm like, I don't have a level 3 for you. And after level 3, they said, we want a level 4. And I'm like, I cannot keep creating courses for you guys. Like, this is going to give you the competency you need to do readings. But tell you what, every year I'll host what was called level 4. And it'll be like advanced training. It'll be new techniques and new concepts. And we'll every year do something instead of, just constantly going up the ladder, so to speak. And now we've got tons of people that we've certified over 100,000 people in over 100 countries. It's just that most people don't want to turn it into something where they're doing it as a business or be listed on the website. We've got tons of people that have trained as teachers. We now have people that are teaching teachers. And so it's turned into something that I couldn't have ever imagined. And that is not me. That is all the record keepers, right? They just have this way of, I don't know, pulling people in. And I'm basically just the steward of the system.
So you woke up one day, you had that dream over the nights, and then you heard Akashic records. And had you ever heard of that before? And then when you looked it up, were you just stunned that it was actually that? Wow.
I had never heard of it. And so that was also pretty cool, because it wouldn't have been a word. Like, I wasn't saying, oh, this is Reiki, or, oh, this is whatever. Right. But once I started working them more, I realized I had been working in them at a very young age. I just never bothered to ask. And I didn't know enough to ask what they were either. Right. But I didn't ask what they were. And I don't know that to the guides it really matters, honestly, because they just want to give you the information. It's not like there's some big hierarchy. We just think there's a hierarchy because that's how this inverted world was created, right? To create a hierarchical system and have us believe that we have to go through a gazillion steps in order to get to the ultimate source of information or the ultimate source of truth.
Because the truth all lies within us, and we don't need a medium or somebody to access divinity or God, or, that's what a lot of religions were set up and put in place to make us not realize our own divine nature, and that we needed someone else in order to, or that was a sin, or all that crazy stuff. We have access within ourselves. And it's really about trusting and surrendering to the information. It's like, you're given something, and, you probably give your clients this information and trusting that it's information, even though it doesn't make sense to you. It doesn't. You're a conduit to whatever they have to say to give to this other person. How do you begin trusting that muscle? I mean, validation from the other people that you're giving the information to probably really helps. And then it makes you trust it more.
It's interesting because I feel like it's actually easier to read other people than it is to read yourself, because we have so many more biases, right? We tend to have way more blind spots. We whether we know it or not, we're attached to outcomes a lot of times, right? So we can go in and ask, is this person my life partner? Should I move to such and such a place, and various things, but we also can be attached. So there's a time and a place to go to someone else to have your records read, because we're not always our most objective person, right? And additionally, we get access in the records to the degree that we have elevated our consciousness. So if we're drunk or we're high or something like that, the depth in which we can go into the records just matches the consciousness that we bring into the space. And the more we commit to expanding our consciousness and to releasing the programs that aren't true, the deeper we can go. So the records are just love and truth. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's such a powerful tool to use right now, because it's going to show, like, I've saved myself so many hours of rabbit hole digging, because right away the records are going to show me whether something's truth, whether it's two truths and a lie, whether it's a full-on lie, whether it's true but the messenger is shady, whether the messenger is fine but they're unknowingly channeling false light. I woke up this morning at the time we're recording this, and there's all this drama about Chris Rock and Will Smith
Oh
from
my
the
God,
same
I
people that
saw
know damn well that everything they see on the world stage, especially put on by Hollywood, is going to be a psyop of some sort, right? It's going to be a distraction, and that it was already scripted. And so they recognize that anything they hear that's controlled by the controllers is a lie, but yet are buying into this real fight between Chris Rock and Will Smith, who are both active deceivers, who are both Satan worshiping pieces of shit, who and we're feeling sorry for them. And we're feeling sorry for them, and we're getting distracted by what's happening on the world stage because we don't know how to create the 5D reality. So this is why we allow our consciousness to continue to be hijacked by the deceivers, because that gives us the illusion of importance. That gives us the illusion of purpose. As long as I can decode what's happening on the world stage, then I don't have to actually be a part of anchoring in the 5D reality, right? I get to keep distracting myself, giving myself the illusion of being busy because I'm researching, I'm investigating, and I'm letting people know about my research. So I feel purposeful. At some point, we're going to have to stop doing that, because the distractions on the world stage are never going to end. That's what it's there for. And this is what is slowing down our movement right now. This is why I'm really big on amping up the awareness of the Akashic Records, because the energy that we're expending being distracted by the world stage can easily be vetted through the records as, is this true? Is it not true? What part of this is true? And moving on and understanding that there's a ton of things that we need to care about right now. We can't care about all of them. And we're not meant to care about all of them, right? Because each of us are coded to pay attention to what we're paying attention to. So for me, from a human design perspective, I am coded to see who are in positions of power and influence and whether they deserve to be there. And that's been from the time I worked in JOBs. I would instantly go into an organization and go, why is this person the director? They're so out of integrity. How did they get this position? And alternately, people that were, underneath that person that were way more qualified for the job, how come they weren't moving up? And I just was curious about it. I didn't realize I was coded for that. But my role in this lifetime is to help people decode the matrix, right? So they can understand, like, if you go to another country where English isn't your first language, your level of enjoyment and your level of flow in that country is going to be based on your ability to speak the language and understand the language and participate. There is a language that's been spoken on this planet for years, all in codes and symbols, right? That if we don't make a point of understanding their language, then we can't outcreate their system. So the records are really good at helping us. Well, they're great at all kinds of things, right? What am I coded for in this lifetime? What is my soul's purpose? What am I here to learn? What am I here to master? We're able to discern a lot of truth in there, but we're also able to look at, how do we outcreate that? How do I get into alignment with my highest timeline? And then based on that, what do I pay attention to? What do I not pay attention to, so that I can live this most exalted existence? So I can be an impeccable steward of my energy, my boundaries, my time, my money, my consciousness, right? Since we know that's what they're coming for. We are in a frequency war. I hate to say it, right? Because I don't like to use the term war, but we're in a frequency war. They're coming at us with all kinds of frequencies. The records help us to mitigate that, because we get to raise our frequency in the records. We get to be intact and restore the truth of who we really be and the harmonics of who we really be, and clearing out all of the density of this, the distortions, the programs, the mind control, all of the things that have been projected onto us for so long, and through our parents and all of our ancestors and so on. And I do believe that our path in this particular lifetime is to really clean up this energy, to really, really clean out the distortions that that not only benefit all of us, but benefit the future generations as well.
Yeah, I feel you're saying something so important, and it so resonates with me right now, because I did see that last night, the whole Chris Rock thing, and I couldn't even. I'm seeing it left and right in my media, my social media, and I just have to keep flicking through it. I'm like, I am not looking at this. I'm not paying attention to this. I can't watch award shows anymore. I can't listen to certain people anymore. And what you said is so relevant about not getting lost up in, oh, this story, let's research this. Why did this happen? Like, they're going to go nuts on all the media about this and analyzing, and I just can't even handle it. And then I even heard, just saw a quick clip of them talking about Florida's Don't Say Gay bill. And we know that's not what it's about. And it's all about the Hollywood propaganda. I was in Hollywood for years. And thank God I lived there and had no idea what was going on, because I moved here and woke up, and what's happening is there's always going to be something. There's always going to be something that is going to draw you away from really having your own integrity over yourself. And the frequency and vibration is just so important. And we're lowering ourselves to such a lower vibration. So what information is what and what is real, without being pulled away into the stories and what you're offering, to really be able to discern by diving into your records, or really looking at what is truth or not, without getting drawn away from what we're here to do.
Well, yeah. And we come by it honestly. There's no judgment of any, like, I have no doubt that I've unintentionally transmitted a false light over the years, because rule number one, or principle number one with the matrix, is that whoever controls the knowledge controls the people, right? So any knowledge that we have of anything, science, politics, the body, food, the shape of the planet, astrology, anything we have, is because they've decided that we're going to have it. So when we understand that, we can actually live in the question more than we live in the answer. And in living in the question, there's freedom, because then we're always allowing our consciousness to calibrate to truth, as opposed to constantly being triggered. Like, well, if we'll just go deep. Last week, I was teaching in my Akashic Record Mastery, which is kind of like getting a PhD in the Akashic Records. And everyone in there is wide awake. I only work with wide awake people, because I can't censor myself, right? And I'm not going to baby people and be like, this is what a root chakra is. Like, we're well beyond that. But anyways, I said, it occurred to me walking my dog one morning last week, or the week before. It was, anyways, around the full moon, and it was still in the sky at like 7:30 in the morning. But I looked at it and I'm like, that is the most artificial looking moon I have seen. And I know that they do a lot of things with, holograms, and I know they block the sun, and I know they just do a lot of things, right? They being the controllers. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it occurred to me, I'm like, holy cow, like, I have done a lot of readings over the years, a lot of readings. And I've taught a lot of classes, and I've never once had astrology come up in the readings. They've never once, like, if I opened your records right now and you said, and you wanted to test me, but you didn't come right out and say, I want to test you, and you said, what's my sun sign? I wouldn't be able to tell you. I should be able to tell you that. So why is that? It doesn't mean astrology is all bad. It's used by the controllers. Again, it's another language we have to understand, because they understand the language of astrology. And I know astrology has been bastardized, by the way, right? Based on our initial time of this planet and our initial timekeepers, which just happen to be in Ethiopia, which is interesting that they really go out of their way to suppress the people in Ethiopia. There's a ton of stuff there, but our original understanding of stars and I'll call it astrology for lack of a better way of putting it, and time, how to calculate time, all originated there. And it's all been distorted, right? It's all been inverted and distorted, because they want to keep us away. It's just one of the gazillion ways they keep us away from the truth of who we are. Back to the astrology, I have some astrologers in that course, And they, it bumped up against their sensibilities because we get locked into a methodology and then we want to defend it. But when we understand that they control the knowledge, why is astrology allowed to exist on the world stage? Why is the Bible, which goes against everything Satanists stand for, allowed to be in all of their systems? Why is everyone saying this is biblical? How does that happen? It's pretty easy to make this a biblical ending when you've written the story, right? So there's a lot of things that don't make sense on the world stage. Like why, if the legal system is actually created by the controllers, then why do you have to swear on a Bible? Why would they use, if they don't believe in it and they are the Antichrist and they think Jesus is a piece of shit, then why did they use a book dedicated to the, Jesus's entire journey? Do you know what I'm saying? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't mean that it's entirely untrue. It doesn't mean Jesus doesn't exist. It doesn't mean there won't be truths in the Bible, but we have to understand that as an energy, it makes no sense for them to allow the Bible to be on the world stage, so prevalent on the world stage, if they control all of the knowledge, which they do, and how history is told and who is influential on the world stage, right? So what you were mentioning to me before we recorded about Deepak Chopra, I'm not going to go into a ton of name calling, but I mean, a lot of these deceivers make themselves very well known on the world stage. Michael Beckwith, Deepak Chopra, Tony Robbins, Richard Branson, Oprah, Ayam Van Zandt, Gabby Bernstein, Marianne Williamson. I share all of this because I know at some point we've crossed paths with a lot of these folks, and they're freely flashing their Freemason hand signals. So I don't have to out them because they've already outed themselves in plain sight, right? But for those of us that couldn't understand why we didn't resonate with certain people or why we no longer resonate, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're owned, but these are the people, like we've had a lot of infiltration into our community, that is designed to create distortions and distractions, because we, of all of the communities on this planet, pose the greatest threat to their agenda, because we hold the power to transmute energy, and we hold the power to see through all of the nonsense and to collapse the programs and to ascend and all the various things, right? And to tip the scale of mass consciousness. So we, of all the communities, are the ones they've had to infiltrate the most.
Yeah, I've been hearing that as well, to be very careful who you're listening to. And like, if you could drop into a meditation, I had someone that went into a meditation and she instantly got herself pulled out. She was really enjoying it. And then she got pulled out when she heard Sirius, and she knew intuitively that they were bringing her, it was the dark entity or dark energy was being brought in, and her guides pulled her right out of it. I think it was Teal Swan. She can't listen to anymore. And
yeah, Teal's owned. Ralph Smart's owned. You can see, I mean, Ralph openly does the one eye symbol, the 369 hand signal over his eyes. And Teal's not even female. So, that's a whole other story for another day. But you can, once you get used to what it looks like when they purposely design their bodies to worship the Baphomet, you can see that there are certain things they can't operate on, right? Like the shoulder structure and jaw lines and various things like that, to show that they actually are male, but they've been shifted around, right? To be worshiping their Baphomet, because their ultimate worship to their god is to have breasts and a penis, right? So again, that's a deeper story for another day, because that really is confronting to people. But there's a lot. If you look at Gwyneth Paltrow, if you look at Cameron Diaz, if you look at a few of them and just their body structure, and you really are willing to see it, it's pretty astounding how much inversion that they've done on the world stage. That's part of what Hollywood was designed to do, right? Was to really have not to just be a distraction, but to get our eyes used to seeing a new race of people, which is to distort our understanding of how a man looks and how a woman looks, right? And it's not to say there's anything about transgender people. I don't care if people change their sex or how they identify. I'm talking about when people are actively altering their body to be part of this deception program. That's what I take issue with.
It's so crazy, like what you're talking about. And for people that are just really realizing it and opening their eyes. I remember the first time I saw stuff like with the adrenochrome and the blood and the Hollywood and how everyone sells their souls. Like, it sounds like science fiction initially. I mean, a lot of science fiction we see is, stuff that's playing out on the world stage as they're programming us to accept it. And, I'm watching something right now called The Feed, and it's like, oh my God, this is exactly what they're doing to us right now. Like I can see the programming. It's not false. It's, they're showing us in advance what's really going to happen, and it's preparing us. But it's interesting because I can't look at certain people like Oprah. I was so disappointed when I heard all this stuff about Oprah in the beginning. I'm like, no, not her. Now I can't even look at her. I can't even look at her. So it is recognizing it. Can you explain the aversion a little more? I know you gave examples of it, and and then there's the hive mind that they're creating.
Well, for those of us that have a conscience and have empathy, it doesn't make sense to us because we instantly look at that stuff. For the people that are still in their slumber, they look at that and they're like, that's not true. That would never happen. Well, as someone that used to investigate crimes against children, I can tell you that that predators actively create images, front-facing images, to look like they're the cat's meow. And then behind closed doors, they're a very different person, right? They get into charity, or they're, Sunday school teacher, or whatever they are. I'm not saying everyone who does that is. I'm just saying that perpetrators or predators will do that because they're trying to confuse the information. And back to the inversion, though, for those of us that have a conscience and have empathy, we don't understand it because we're not narcissists, we're not sociopathic, we're not psychopathic. We care, right? So we can't imagine that people would do that. But we also came here with the power to create, and they didn't, right? These beings that have chosen to align with the Luciferian agenda, satanic agenda, whatever you want to call it, they don't know how to create. All they know how to do is invert what we've created, invert the divinity of creation and anything that comes through that lineage, we'll say, right? So they, let's look at what's happening in the Ukraine. People, we won't entirely know what's happening there, but what we do know is that every single leader on the world stage only gets there because they're owned. They're a front-facing puppet, that the back-facing puppet masters are ultimately deciding what's going on. So Russia, the Russian president and the Ukrainian president are potentially besties, who knows, but they're definitely laughing at the end of the night going, did you see what we did to these humans? Oh, we've got them all. And they're dressed in military. They're willing to fight. Look at this supermodel in the Ukraine. She's willing to fight. No, there's a thing called photo ops. Like I can put on fatigues right now and pose in front of some sort of thing, and it can be photoshopped, and I can convince everyone that I'm some big hero, that I'm fighting in the war. Where the inversion comes in is that I've got you thinking that there's a war over here, but really what I'm doing is I'm going after a country that's only about 30% vaccinated and displacing a boatload of them, so that when I offer them status in my country, like I'm in Canada, well, we'd love to have you come to Canada. We want to give you a home. You just need to be vaccinated to come over here. And then on top of that, we displace you, we abolish your homes, we actually have your own military bombing you and doing all kinds of things so that you have no home to go to, so that magically I can be this can be the first country that we can introduce universal basic income, and we'll take care of you. But again, you just need to be vaccinated in order to get your first paycheck for sitting around and doing nothing. Doesn't this sound amazing? Nasara, Jasara, isn't this awesome? We're all going to make the same amount of money. We won't own anything, but we will be happy. And that's kind of an example of inversion, right? And then because that happened, they make us think it's our idea. Of course, if you're in a war-torn country and you're homeless and it's freaking cold out, and by the way, about 30 to 45 days before a PSYOP like this, they do something on the world stage to set the tone. So probably about a month before the Ukraine war, I didn't even know it was going to happen. I saw this commercial by Kate Blanchett, who's also a man, talking about UNICEF and how we have to give more money to UNICEF because people that it's cold, and imagine being homeless, imagine being a refugee when it's cold, and how hard it is to feed you and your children and keep them warm when you're cold. And then poof, a month later, we've got this war in the Ukraine and it's freaking cold over there. So yeah, I'm going to be really happy if I'm cold and I'm stressed and I haven't eaten and I'm sleeping in a subway station with a bunch of strangers. Who knows what's happening in these places where people are being displaced, and the government gives me a home. Yeah, I'm going to be happy because I'm going to be having massive PTSD And anything seemingly is going to be better than living in a subway or living on the streets or living under a bridge or, whatever the case is, right, for people. And we don't even know the extent of it. But the point is that you were talking about the divinity before. One of the major inverted triangles that they put us in is lack, limitation, and self-destruction, right? So we're always lacking. We're never enough. We're never worthy enough. We're never deserving enough. We never have enough. That's not true. That keeps us from the divine truth of who we are, which is abundant. We have infinite access to anything. We have access to infinite possibilities. Limitation, right? So here we are living in a world of infinite possibilities, but still buying into the program of limitation and restriction and repression and suppression. And then we are extensions of the infinite creative life force. And so we are divinity in a body, walking around in a body. And yet they're constantly creating programs for us to destroy ourselves.
So what would you suggest, or how can people that are seeing what's going on in the Ukraine, what's actually happening and not getting lost in the psyops that are happening everywhere, when everybody, you can see it's the mass formation and it's like the world's going crazy. They're not, information's right in front of their face and they're not willing to look at it. So people that are awake in all this propaganda and fear, and there might probably going to be another lockdown and all that. So how would you guide people? What would you suggest to them to stay above it, to just keep staying above it all?
Well, understanding that anything that we're seeing because they want us to see it. So if they don't want us to see it, we're not going to see it. There's a reason that we see what we see, right? Like people think BitChute is some sort of alternate platform. No, it exists on the world stage. We just have the illusion that it's alternative, right? And it doesn't mean that there isn't truth over there. It just means that BitChute exists and Telegram exists and all of these platforms that everyone's running to thinking that they're getting some sort of privacy while they're on their iPhone, tuning into their Telegram channel, that they have some semblance of privacy. Like, well, you need to give our head a shake. They have access to technology that we will never understand. They have access to frequencies that we'll never understand. So we need to recognize that they control the narrative and they control the counter narrative. So even when we're seeing the trucker convoy in Canada, even when we're seeing RFK Jr. pretending to give any shits about people being vaccinated, who's part of the longest lineage of PSYOP families imaginable, right? They're one of the biggest front-facing deceiver families on the planet. And he's allowed to live on the world stage, no longer attached to his family, that they're all able to be Freemasons and be a bunch of pieces of shit. And he's magically some hero that actually gives a shit about vaccinations, right? We can't just feel, right? This is what the issue is. It feels true. So then we rely on our feelings. And something can feel true, and then the other part of it doesn't feel true. But because some of it feels true, we're like, well, if it feels true, it must all be true, right? Like Trump tells some truth. It feels true. So therefore Trump must be trustworthy and everything that comes out of his orange face must be true. No, it's not. How can a guy be on a major TV network for many, many years on TV? You're not getting on that level of TV, having your own show, unless you're owned. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. And if you get a star, which is Freemasonry, on the Walk of Fame, you're not getting that star unless you fulfilled your obligations to the controllers on whatever you contracted to do to be a part of the deceiving of the dumb humans, right? Because they view us as commodities and they view us as experiments. That's all we are to them, commodities, hence the word human resources, and experiments, hence all of this medical bullshit that's going on, right? So we can't just feel our way through information because the feelings are not enough. We have feeling, we have intuition, then we have to use critical thinking. But it has to start with decoding the matrix. I'm actually putting a webinar on for that because even in the awake community, right, there's still a lot, I'm actually doing it because there's a lot of people that are drinking their Kool-Aid sacrament to Trumpelstiltskin and getting their consciousness hijacked because of the savior paradigm that's been propagated on this planet by the controllers. Starting with all the religion, we know everything about the Catholic Church and so on. We know about all of these false idols and worship and stuff. That's part of what Hollywood did as well, right? False idolatry and things like that. anyways, we need to understand how to speak the language so we can understand what we're actually being shown on the world stage, and understanding that anything we've been told, anything that exists about history, is because they want us to believe that that's how, like, they control what stays on the world stage, right? So if they can cancel Dr. Seuss, right, they can also decide, and we don't really know. I mean, I didn't really pay attention to that, but I just know they control who's an influencer on the world stage. You're only allowed to be having international influence if you're controlled. They will decide that. And so we know that anyone that we're seeing on the world stage that's being presented as someone that's good, Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, like, I could give you a ton of names, Princess Diana, like any of these folks that have influence on the world stage, there's a reason that they have that, because they decide who has influence, because they want to control the people. So they have to control who influences the people. So when we understand that, the propaganda machines are there from the governed mind, which is there to govern our mind, then we can look at everything objectively. And when we understand the language to go along with that, then we can decipher what we actually need to pay attention to, and what is just fear porn, what's designed to keep us hooked into the system, what's designed to keep us paralyzed in fear. Right now, I look at this stuff, I just laugh at it. I'm like, oh, every so often I go on the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation website, which is the Canadian TV station here. And the front page is always loaded with bullshit, right? Mm-hmm. But it's good to go on it because I get to see what's coming, but I'm detached from it. Mm-hmm. That's actually a little tip, by the way. If you get emotional when you're reading anything, you know that it's not entirely true, because you can look at something that's true and be like, oh crap, that's true, but not have an emotional reaction, not get hooked, not feel the need to instantly go on social media and post about, can you believe they're doing this? It's like, that's your cue to know that something's going on. It's also why I unpack the Super Bowl every year, because that is designed to let us know in plain sight what they have planned for us for the next season of our life, right? So they've already told us, if anyone watched the Super Bowl this year, which is their major, I mean, it's multiple things, right? But it, above all else, it's a massive predictive programming tool for the masses. And it tells us, the halftime show is designed to tell us what is coming down the pipeline. And we can see that massive military intervention is coming down the pipeline. A lot of people being locked up for likely choosing medical sovereignty, I'm guessing, would be the message around that. They put a lot of Freemason symbology into this year. There were, even if anyone watched it, it was very quick, but if you watch it in screenshots, you'll see the alien heads that they had in portions of the thing. So this will likely be the year that they pull some crap from the sky and try and blame it on aliens. And like, who knows entirely what they have planned, but we know that it's their intention to keep us suppressed. It's their intention to lock us down again. And so we have to look at, how do we outcreate that? How can we actually, at this point, we need to stop focusing on the people that are asleep. For all we know, they're coded for that. If they're meant to wake up, they will. No amount of yelling at people to wake up is going to make them wake up, just as telling someone to calm down is going to do the opposite of making them calm down. What my mission is right now is to help the awake community really elevate their understanding of how the world works, and stop giving their consciousness to Trump and Q and a lot of these false truthers on the world stage, right? That are put there purposely to deceive us, so that we can actually, as I mentioned, live way more in the question than living in the absolute, because there is no absolute.
Wow. My gosh, you're blowing my mind. a lot of the stuff you're talking about, I'm absolutely familiar with, but I'm blown away by a lot of the stuff that you're saying, and as well, a lot of the audience. And I think it's so important, because I didn't come on for a while because I felt I wasn't embodying my message. I was getting triggered. I was getting pulled away. And I think this is the next level, is to realize, like you said, everything's a stage, and I've talked about pulling out and observing everything that's going on, but you're even pulling out from even pulling out from pulling out, instead of like, oh, it's Russia this, it's Russia that, knowing that it's all controlled and it's about managing our own frequency and our vibration and, staying out of that and keeping ourselves prepared, but yet sovereign and, not wrapped up in the matrix of fear. And there's falsities around what we think is truth as well. And not following one person as.
And like, there's some deceivers. I don't want to out too many people because really I like teaching people how to watch for that stuff so that they can decide, because it's not my intention to gossip or throw people under the bus. But there are some people that are telling truth, but they are full on Decepticons, right? Let's look at JP Sears. JP Sears wearing his purple shirt, which is Freemasonry, and his orange hair, which is Freemasonry. Not that that alone would suggest that he's controlled, but when you're promoting Operation Underground Railroad, which is actually trafficking children, it's just a front-facing charity that maybe 10% actually does what they promise, but the 90% behind the scenes actually traffic children. So we're giving money to an organization like many of these charities, right? The Red Cross, we know, and like various things are just full of shit. He's promoting that, and Tony Robbins is promoting that, and he's besties with Tony Robbins, and we all know Tony Robbins is at least a 33-degree Freemason. We don't know if he's gone up since then, right? He's now on the world stage, by the way, promoting anti-aging stuff, which I think is hilarious. So what is in that? Is it adrenochrome that you're packaging and selling? Like, what is it? Is this why you're promoting Operation Underground Railroad, so you can traffic more children and get more stuff to put in face cream to sell people anti-aging? Like, what? I don't know what the agenda is. I haven't unpacked it too much, but he's gone down all these rabbit holes, and yet he's still promoting Trump. And he keeps talking about how he's being censored and being deplatformed and demonetized, but his YouTube channel is still here, and he keeps knocking the government every week. And his followers have gone up. He's promoting a social media channel called Zion. Like, could you be any more blatant about your stuff, right? And yet, so this is someone we don't think is a deceiver, right? Because they come in and all of a sudden they have a viral video. That's something I also watch for as well. It doesn't mean someone is because they have a viral video. I'm saying you look at all of the pieces of it, right? Like, we all put out good content. My shit doesn't go viral the way his does. How did that happen? Because they control through YouTube, which is their platform, what people see and what they don't, and they're in it for the long game. They've, as you know, spent decades preparing this. They can have JP on the world stage for 5 years and get us all thinking he's just this funny spiritual guy that's awake, and we entrust him. So then when he starts telling us that we should believe that Trump's a good guy, or we should, he's saying a lot of truths. I don't mean about Trump, but I mean like about the deception, right? But really, why does he still have such a sizable platform? Why does he keep getting more followers on a platform that he keeps saying is trying to demonetize him and deplatform him?
Those are such important things to look out for. I never thought of it that way. I thought they were the good people. Yeah.
Laura Eisenhower, right? She's the granddaughter of a Freemason. Every single president, the U.S. was created on Freemasonry. The Constitution is written by Freemasons. If you go to some of their epitaphs, they have Freemason above president, because they're supposed to put Freemasonry above presidency, right, in their titles. And so every president is a Freemason. Every president's owned. Every world leader is owned. And so Laura Eisenhower, who can't even look the camera straight in the eye ever, and talks in a frenetic thing, creates a light out of dark, or whatever it's called, show with a boxer who's also a Freemason, pretending that they care about us and putting all this stuff on the world stage. And then she's now defending herself apparently about it. Like, this is what I'm talking. This is how insidious it is, because they pretend that they care. And they talk like honey badgers, right? I care about you. Oh my God, we can't let this happen. Oh my God, it's urgent. We got to tell you the truth. We're coming on here urgently to tell you the truth.
I just saw yesterday, and I know we're going to be wrapping this up in a minute, but just speaking into that, I forgot the number one skateboarder in the world. Like, there was a video of him. I don't know if it's a commercial for his new skateboard, but literally they pulled vials of his blood and they mixed it in the paint. They're painting his skateboard with the blood. So his blood
Mm.
is going to be in these skateboards, and it has kind of a skeleton or kind of like, I forgot the name of it, death or devil or something in the skateboard. I thought that was
Mm-hmm.
really, really creepy, but wow, we just like
Mm-hmm.
totally took a total tangent, but I think it's so important. Like, I mean, the Akashic Records, maybe we'll have you on another time talking more about the Akashic, but this is tying into it all about how we need to raise ourselves and access these things that are, our soul's purpose, and, what's aligned with our soul and our frequency and our vibration, not getting distracted by the crazy world around us. And I'd love to hear, I mean, you've got these amazing programs. You're in the middle of your spiritual mastery right now. How often do you offer something like that? Can you give a brief description about that?
Probably, yeah. So we have the Akashic Record Mastery. So I have like a cohesive training that's just for level 1 and 2, level 1, 2, and 3 training, which is like core competency. But then the mastery is that plus a bunch of ascension teachings and really going deep, like really, really going deep into how do you be the lighthouse, essentially. And how do you activate as many lighthouses as possible? Because that's what we need right now. We don't need to wake up the sheep. We need to wake up the lions, so to speak, right? And I don't mean that people that are awake aren't, but I'm saying like we really want to bring out that feral sort of, I call it solar feminine energy, right? It's like sacred rage, basically. We should be offended by what's happening on the world stage. We should be offended by what's happening in humanity, but we don't want to stay in that. We want to look at what's true, but then how do we help our clients? How do we really inspire as many lighthouses as possible? Because that's how we tip mass consciousness. So this means that we have to be dedicated to being a pristine channel of truth. So that level of mastery is not for everyone. It's for people that really love going deep. They have a growth mindset. They're just always committed to going deeper. It's not for people that are just kind of curious, and it's okay to be curious. It's for people that they're very committed to being a pristine channel. So they're willing to lean in and ask the tough questions. It's uncomfortable to lean into these untruths, right? It's very uncomfortable to, even within our community, I mean, right? There's a lot of truths that are propagated that are actually not entire truths. Maybe they're not lies, but they're not, they're skewed to favor the deceivers, right? Like unity consciousness, right? Is just a psyop. It's just a fancy way of getting a bunch of light workers to think it's a good idea that we all think the same way and we all unify one mind. And that's not actually what we're here to do. We're here to be unique individuals, right? But unity consciousness is just a fancy way of describing the metaverse. It's just different language. In the tech world, it's called the metaverse. In the lightworker community, it's called unity consciousness.
Wow. I just had Joe Dispenza pop into my mind. I hope he's not one of them, because he is all about the quantum.
Well, I don't know. There's a lot I don't know. And that's actually the beauty of it. That's the weirdness of it, because living in the void of all of the empty spaces that were once filled with information that we thought to be true can feel weird, because we're wired to want to seek out information and to connect the dots and to have answers to our questions of why am I here? What's the purpose of this world? And so on. It doesn't mean that what we believe isn't true. It just means that we want to live in the question of, is it possible that there's more to this story or less to this story than what I've been shown? And to these concepts and various things.
Oh, well, it's been so wonderful having you on. Like, I'm going to really just get off this podcast and really sit with a lot of the information that you just gave me. I really have a lot of things to think about myself. And I'm sure you gave my audience a lot to think about as well. Like, this is like really a lot of deep dive stuff. So where can people find you if they want to reach out? I know I'd really love to hear more about that webinar you have coming up and some of your programs.
Yeah, so it's April 12th, and I don't even know, I just won't even be able to cover everything, but as you can hear, my brain works at the meta level, right? So I want to look at patterns. I'm trained as a forensic investigator, right? That's how my brain works. I look at patterns. So I'm going to look at some of the core patterns of how the deceivers work, how the world works, and show some of the language of how they speak and how they speak in plain sight, so that our brains can start getting used to decoding it, right? So this is for people that are already awake, but maybe are still thinking that there's an actual war in the Ukraine and Russia, like still getting hooked emotionally by that stuff, thinking that China is actually a bad country. No, China is not a bad country. That's just the role they play on the world stage, right? So we're going to unpack a lot of this stuff on April 12th. It's 2 hours, and then I have a follow-up Q&A because I realize it's going to be super triggering and confronting, and that's not my intention, but I just recognize that when you're collapsing a bunch of belief systems, right, and you're literally having to suspend everything you thought you knew about science and about the body and about food and about the Bible and about whatever else we've been programmed to believe, even for those of us that are awake, right, is going to at least just open us up to other possibilities. Because in creating this new world, by the way, if we want to ascend, the ascension journey also requires descension, which means that we have to go up and then we have to bring that wisdom from that higher plane back into the body. But in order to do that, we can't even ascend if there's the density of the programs that are false, right? So anything that's illusion, anything that's distortion, that's density. And it's hard to ascend when that's like a brick that's holding the helium balloon down. So we have to release the brick in order for the balloon to fly away, basically, right? So it's impossible to have one without the other. So if we're really committed to this 5D consciousness, if we're really committed to ascension, we have no choice but to look at this. We're either going to be smucked in the face with the universal 2x4, or we can just choose to dive into it and unpack it on our own volition, essentially. So if people go to souljourneys.ca, then that's where you'll find everything that we've got going on. But I also have the Purpose Posse on Facebook, which is for spiritual entrepreneurs that want to take their business to the next level, but do it in a way that's more aligned with the 5D timeline, essentially.
Jennifer, I can't thank you enough for coming on here and sharing so many insights and departing so much knowledge that you have, which is helping so many awakened ones, those that have been awakened and need to take it to the next level, or those that are just beginning to open their eyes and shake off the dust of illusion, to really be a guide to helping them find what is true, what is a false reality, and helping to create leaders that are going to help everybody ascend into the light, because that's what's needed on our planet right now. Definitely, folks, if you found something that was an aha, something that might have blown your mind, or something that you want to dive into a little bit more, definitely check out some of our programs on souljourneys.ca. All the information will be in the show notes. Again, I'm so honored you took the time to share with us on this show.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Awakened Heart Podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, share it with a friend. And if you haven't already, head on over to your favorite podcast app to subscribe, rate, and review. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback, you can reach me at theawakenedheartpodcast.com.